from what is described as a 1985 affidavit signed by Hahn. Although the affidavit is not described further, the quotes are similar, if not identical, to those she'd given in a taped statement that's already quoted in Star Magazine, Newsweek, Newsday, and other publications. The Hahn story is in the October issue of Penthouse, which goes on sale day after tomorrow on Wednesday, while the Playboy issue of the article goes on sale September the 28th. And I have Mr. Michael Isikoff on the line. He is a reporter for the Washington Post, and I assume you're in Washington.
Yes, I am.
Michael, good to talk with you again. You know what you were about to say?
No, I was about to say that what Jessica Hahn has had to is saying in the current issue of Penthouse, written by my colleague Art Harris, and will be saying in Playboy, is of a great deal of interest, far beyond whatever prurient interest people have in learning exactly what her sexual encounter with Jim Baker was like back in 1980. And that is to say, it's of interest to the federal prosecutors who are investigating the PTL regime under Jim Baker right now.
You know what she says?
Yeah, well, we've seen the affidavit, of course. What she's going to have to say in Playboy, we don't know. But what's of particular interest is, as I say, not the nature of the sexual encounter itself, but what took place after that, and most specifically, the funds that were paid to Jessica Hahn from PTL coffers to buy her silence, and that's what's of interest to the federal prosecutors.
How much did they give her?
Well, we don't know the full amount. It's in excess of $300,000. I think it was $375,000 trust fund was set up. Now, of course, Jessica Hahn or her representatives have indicated that they that she did not receive all of that, and that a great deal was paid to intermediaries, and a great deal was simply put into the trust fund and not actually ever tapped by Jessica Hahn.
Michael, explain to me how it all evolved. First, Jim Baker came into the hotel room. They gave her drugged wine.
Yeah. Well, it's been a while since
I haven't heard about drugged wine since Sigmund Romberg's Desert Song.
Well, this is, of course, the Hahn story, that she was given the wine, and then she'd been brought there by John Wesley Fletcher, a Baker associate at the time, and Baker was then came into the room and
had his way with her, and then Fletcher came into the room.
And then Fletcher came into the room.
It said, in effect, in the words of Jolson, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there's even some, there have been some indications that a third person came into the room later, and whether or not the third person made any overture or not is something that's been in dispute. But,
okay. And so she had sex with at least two men, according to her report.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay? And then what? What happened after that? I mean, how did the trust fund get established? Did she...
Well, we actually, there are a number of unanswered questions into exactly how all this took place. But at some point, and this is several years later, Jessica Hahn professes to have been greatly disturbed about what took place. She had been urged to keep silent about it. The fact that Jim Baker was going about his merry way, building his PTL empire, and professing to be the great moral leader that he did, disturbed Jessica Hahn, knowing the nature of what their relationship had been. She informed representatives about what had took place, and then it led to a series of meetings in which the trust fund was finally set up.
Well, exactly to whom did she blow the whistle?
Well, there is a gentleman by the name of Paul Roper who has acted as her advisor on these matters. He is in California. He works with people who have been involved in cult groups and whatnot, and Roper acted as intermediary between Hahn and the officials of PTL.
How did they find each other?
Well, I think that's one of the unanswered questions, and that's that much. Some of these questions have not been answered, and when Jessica Hahn has not told her full story yet, she may be telling some of that in the upcoming Playboy interview. But of more importance will be not what she says to Playboy, not what she says to Penthouse, but what she says to the federal prosecutors who have subpoenaed her to appear before the grand jury that's currently meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina.
How much dough do you think she's gotten for these two reports?
I have no idea, but...
What's your guess?
Well, you could... I don't think she got anything from Penthouse because that story written by my colleague Art Harris basically relies on the affidavit that the Washington Post, in fact, originally obtained, that Art originally obtained.
If Penthouse didn't give her any money, it seems like she was done to twice. Or 3 times.
No, because, well, for one thing, she did get a considerable amount of money from Playboy. Presumably also she has, well, we don't know not only what she's told Playboy, but what she's revealed to Playboy. So we'll find out when the Playboy comes out.
And are there any pictures?
I don't know. That's what exactly what I was referring to.
What does, it's Dominic Barbara, her lawyer, who says, wait till you read and see Playboy.
Yeah, well, that would suggest to me that it's not just her account of what took place, but there's some photographic accompaniments.
You mean this little sweet thing in tight jeans took it off? Michael, I got to tell you, my sympathies are with the young lady, but I've never seen so many bottom shots in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, she has been in enough pictures to take care of every fanny fetishist in the Western world.
Sure. Well, and there may be a lot more to come, so...
Watch your language.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Michael, your colleague, it's Art Harris?
Yes.
How did the Washington Post reporter, how did Penthouse contact him?
Well, I was out of the country at the time, but as I understand it, they just called him up. But Art had written about this for the Washington Post some months back. So the gist of what Jessica Hahn has had to say, what she said in that affidavit has been reported in the Washington Post, and I believe other media afterwards.
What do you think the future of Ms. Hahn is after the Playboy, Penthouse, exposés, articles, pictures, whatever?
My sense of Jessica Hahn is that she's a tough one to figure out.
She could run for mayor.
Yeah.
We've got one mayor with a 28-year-old mind. Maybe we need a 28-year-old body.
Well, I'll leave that to New York political pundits, although she does live on Long Island, so that presumably that would disqualify her from being mayor of the 5 boroughs.
Yeah. She can move into town.
Right.
Anyway, what else?
Right. Well, one thing that's been overlooked here in all the excitement about what Jessica has had to say in Penthouse and Playboy is, the investigation that is still going on in North Carolina, and this is a serious multi-agency federal investigation involving the Justice Department, the Internal Revenue Service, the U.S. Postal Service, in which they are looking at serious allegations of wire fraud, mail fraud, and tax fraud on the part of the Bakers and their colleagues. This is underway. The grand jury is meeting. Witnesses are being called, and people may view this as some sort of humorous sexual scandal, but in fact it's a great deal more than that. And
it may be the biggest ripoff since Ponzi.
Yeah, well, that has already been suggested. In addition, not just the federal prosecutors, but the United States Congress has gotten interested in this. There is a subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee that has announced its intention to hold hearings, not just on the practices at PTL, but on the practices of all the TV evangelical ministries. And they have called, in addition to the Bakers, they have called as witnesses Jerry Falwell, Oral Roberts, Jimmy Swaggart, Robert Schuller. These hearings are scheduled for some time. The date has not yet been scheduled, but they will be upcoming in the next next few weeks.
And are they being subpoenaed or just requested?
Well, at this point, just requested. They're saying they're not conducting a criminal inquiry at this point. Of course, that's up to the Justice Department in any case. But they are looking at a number of things, including the tax status of these ministries, whether these ministries deserve the tax-exempt status that they've got now, how they use charitable donations, their financial accountability, and what kind of compensation these leading TV evangelists have been getting from their donors.
What are they purported to? What does Jimmy Swaggart get?
Well, I do not have all the figures at my fingertips at the moment, but we know how much the bakers are getting, and they were getting salaries in excess of $1.6 million in 1986 alone. Some of the other figures have come out, but of course it's not just what they get in compensation, because all these televangelists get far more than their salaries. They get homes provided by the ministries. They get cars provided by the ministries. They get a whole host of benefits, as we've seen in the PTL case.
What are the bakers up to right now? What are they doing?
Well, I just noted on the wires yesterday today that they had a little rally at their retreat in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, for their hardcore supporters who trooped out there from TTL, and Jim repeated his previous charges that the ministry had been stolen from him by Jerry Falwell, and they've been talking about setting up another ministry someplace else. They've contacted a number of organizations about that, and they seem to be going about just as though nothing was going on. They were under had no criminal problems whatsoever, and there wasn't any grand jury meeting in North Carolina, which it looks fine from a public relations point of view, but at some point the chickens will come home to roost. Do
you think anybody's going to go to jail?
I think that if the prosecutors do their job, somebody will go to jail, because there's millions of dollars that has not been accounted for at PTL, and if the bakers were not responsible for the missing money, then somebody sure was.
Michael, I thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Michael Isikoff, reporter for the Washington Post, and as he said, in a few weeks there are going to be congressional hearings on television evangelists, and coming up I'm going to be talking with Mr. Bob Guccione, Penthouse. Well, this next week and the week after it promises to be hot stuff on the newsstands. Jessica Hahn. She's for a lady that didn't want to give any interviews, she's sure been talking to a lot of people and posing for a lot of pictures. 570 WMCA. You have any comment? Let me hear. You have any negatives? And on the Newsmaker line, Mr. Bob Guccione, who is the editor and publisher of Penthouse magazine. Bob, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Ben?
Very well, and I thank you for being on our line.
My pleasure.
Tell me about Penthouse. When do you come out, and what's going to be about Jessica Hahn?
Well, in this area, we come out today, and we'll be on the West Coast today, and in another 4 or 5 days, we'll be all over the rest of the country. And we've got a big scoop on Jessica Hahn. We've got the entire story, the result of 7 in-person, in-depth interviews by Art Harris of the Washington Post, all of the documents and letters that we got, letters signed and unsigned, sworn affidavits. We've got everything. And we broke the story now. We were involved in a bidding war for her personal story, along with Playboy. When they started asking for $1 million, and I said to her lawyers, whom I met on 3 separate occasions with her, well, what have you got that's worth $1 million that we don't already have? And they gave me tidbits of the things that she would say if I bought the story, and everything that she would say, the so-called revelations that we would have access to, we already had on paper.
I see.
So we had the story faster. We were able to come out with it a whole month ahead of Playboy, and I believe Playboy paid for it and didn't get any more than we did.
And how about pictures?
Well, when they first came to us, they offered to do pictures. You know, her lawyers, she had 3 separate sets of lawyers. And the first group that came Jessica said that she would do pictures. But I said if she does pictures, she's going to hurt the credibility, her own credibility, and hurt the story. And that in this instance, the story was the big thing and not the pictures. Because she frankly is not a glamour girl. She's a very attractive young lady, but she's not beautiful, and she's not the kind of girl that typically you would see in a magazine like ours, or that people would go out of their way to look at, if you understand.
You're telling me that her physical dimensions are not up to Penthouse standards.
Well, it's not her physical dimensions. It's she herself. She's rather quiet and mousy in a way. She's retiring. She's not a vivacious, pneumatic type of girl. And as I said, the most important thing being that her story would lack credibility if she started posing in the nude. This is a girl who is supposed to have been injured not only physically but psychologically as a result of her encounter with Baker and Fletcher.
Bob, how'd she strike you when you met her?
She struck me not as being as calculating as she has become. I think she was probably very innocent at the time that Baker and Fletcher took advantage of her. I think she's matured a little bit since. She's still naive in a lot of respects. She leaves everything up to her lawyers and seems to be willing to do almost anything to satisfy everybody. But she's changed somewhat. She's now a little bit more calculating. She doesn't bargain for her story, but she sits there while her lawyers do. And it's an uncomfortable thing when you're negotiating for a story with a person like that.
And it's uncomfortable to have the principal sitting there.
Yeah, especially in the light of the details of the story. Because when I asked for the revelations, I said, look, tell me, what is it that I'm going to get for $1 million? What are you going to say to me? What can I publish that no one has published before that people don't already know or suspect?
Sure.
And they started giving me some details. Well, we already had those details in spades. She really has pumped that story out in bits and pieces. In a lot of stuff, of course, that wasn't published, but they were in public affidavits. They were in the publicly accessible affidavits, but legal and sworn.
Bob, how did Jessica Hahn come to all of these people in the first place? How did the story evolve after the hotel room or the motel room?
Well, it appears that a lady whose name has not been divulged wrote a letter to the PTL saying that she was writing on Jessica's behalf. And among other things, she said that Jessica had sustained permanent psychological and emotional scars. And she said, she wanted to say that you must know that she suffered spiritual damages as well. And her work was suffering, her job was at stake. She found it impossible to sustain any romantic attachments. And all of this had the potential of ruining her chances of enjoying a full and normal life. She then went on to say that Miss Hahn requires and deserves an opportunity to pick up the pieces of her life and rebuild it. She needs the financial means. $100,000 is not excessive in view of what happened, and so on and so forth. This was the content of the letter that the lady sent.
To whom?
To the PTL.
I see.
And I think it was to a guy named Taggart. And then, of course, this fellow Roper, hearing about the incident, got a long, in-depth affidavit sworn by Jessica Hahn in which he disclosed the whole of her story. He went physically to the PTL and negotiated, I think, the $240,000 or $250,000 trust fund that was then set up for her. And out of that, she received only $25,000. That's when the Falwell crowd came in and cut off the payments to her and cut off a trust fund. And there was another attempt by the PTL to pay her an additional $60,000, which, of all things, was routed through WedTech, if you remember that company.
Of course. They're practically on trial now.
That's right. Now, I don't know how she became involved with WedTech, but the $60,000 was sent to WedTech and then supposedly through WedTech to a New York congressman and his wife who were known to Jessica Hahn. But the $60,000 never got to Jessica Hahn. She only got $10,000 of that $60,000. So somewhere along the line, between WedTech and the congressman.
Who's the congressman?
$50,000 was missing.
Who's the congressman?
I forget his name at the moment, but he's been in the news, and I think he is also facing an indictment.
I see. What's her future? What do you think?
Well, her future is that she's been able to blow up a 90-minute sexual incident of rather forceful proportions, I suppose, to quite a small personal fortune.
Was she raped?
According to her story, she was. But she was a willing rape victim because she was really, it was forced upon her, but she accepted it. It was that kind of a situation. She was overcome, I think, and persuaded by the fact that these were two evangelical celebrities whom she admired over television. She looked up to them and she saw them as being men of God. And in fact, when Fletcher, who followed Baker, was using and abusing her, he made some remark like, just think how many people you're helping. Referring to Baker, he said, he is the shepherd, and when you help the shepherd, you help the sheep. So it made her feel that she was helping his flock by helping him because he was in a bad way. He presented himself to her as being very, very down, in a very sort of difficult way because his wife was ignoring him. He felt that Tammy Faye was having an affair with another man, and he said, and besides that, she's not really capable of satisfying me because she's too big. So they made Jessica Hahn feel that she was doing something very important, not just for Baker individually, but for the church at large.
Wasn't there a third man involved?
There was a third man who arrived on the scene later. I don't think that anything happened between them, but he was there to sort of mop up afterwards. But an interesting sidelight to all of this was that after the affair, after Fletcher and Baker had used Jessica, they left the hotel room, but they left the television pre-tuned to the TTL show. So as she lay there recovering in her hotel room and watching television, she saw the ministry come on the air, and she saw Baker and Fletcher chatting to each other over the air, and Fletcher was saying to Baker, quote, "You had a good time today." And Jim answered, "Yeah, I need more rest like that." And Fletcher added, "The Lord really ministered to us today. We need more ministry like that."
Did she get angry?
You can imagine what a slap in the face that was.
Yeah, yeah.
To hear that experience discussed so openly on television. Of course, nobody else knew what they were talking about.
What a couple of real creeps.
There you go.
What happens now, do you think?
Well, I think that she is no longer going to have any positive impact on the TTL affair. I think it's gone way beyond that now.
Sure.
It's being investigated by the IRS and by the FBI, and also by the various other organizations. I think that the Baker Tammy Faye thing is over and done with for all time.
Yeah.
And they might well wind up being indicted.
Bob, I'm curious why the ongoing, fight at OK Corral between you and Hugh Hefner.
Well, it's not a fight so much as it is competition. You know, we both compete for the same audience, and
I get the feeling that a lot of people buy each book.
Well, they do. There's a lot of overlap, but there are a lot of readers who are absolutely faithful to Penthouse, and there are many readers absolutely faithful to Playboy. And we each seek to grab the other's readers at the same time, like two newspapers across the street from each other.
Sure.
Scoop.
Do you know him?
I know him very casually. I met him once about 10 or 12 years ago.
Boy, that must have been some meeting. That was like Custer at Little Bighorn.
Yes. A very brief little meeting.
What was your measure of him?
Well, I didn't really get a chance to get an impression of the man. I met him at a 1,000-person New Year's Eve party at Bernie Kornfeld's house. Bob,
we've known each other a spell. You're one of the savviest people I've ever met. What'd you think of him?
Well, he came across as a nice guy, but I had quite apart from that first and only meeting. I have a lot of respect for the man. I've always had a lot of respect for him. I'm sorry that he's not more active in the production of his magazine these days, because I feel that it gives me the upper hand, you know.
What's your circulation this month with now this news story?
Oh, I think it'll probably be pretty close to the 4.5 million mark.
Unbelievable. And then the pass along is, what, 10 times that?
Oh, 8 to 10 times, yeah.
So we're talking about Bob Guccione's Penthouse reaching 40, 50 million people.
That's right.
Can you sleep with that at night?
And that's only here in the U.S. There are 10 foreign editions now.
Wow. What a heavy crown that is. You like it?
Love it.
When do you know, what issue are you working on at the moment?
December.
December?
That's right.
And you do all the photography yourself, so.
Well, I do all of the pictorial editing and designing myself. I do some of the photographs occasionally, but I'm responsible for all the photography that's in the magazine. I buy it, assign it, assign the girls, crop it, design the layouts. I keep that part to myself.
Unbelievable. Bob Guccione, I thank you. Penthouse on the newsstands this day.
Thank you very much.
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.
Take care.
Bob Guccione, the publisher of Penthouse magazine. They have the story of Jessica Hahn.